Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, a historic first. A woman will be Mexico's next president.
Many hoping that the winner will usher in new winds of change in a country with a strong patriarchal culture and where more than 10 femicides take place on a daily basis.
With violence against women still rampant, what difference will it make? I'm Malika Bilal, and this is The Take.
My name is Lucia Newman. I'm Al Jazeera's senior Latin American correspondent, and right now I am in Mexico City, although I've been sort of all over Mexico lately, but speaking to you right now from the capital.
Lucia, welcome back to The Take. So, voters head to the polls on Sunday for an election that will be historic. The two frontrunners are women, which means Mexico will very likely have its first woman president. You have been covering elections in Latin America for a very long time. Does this feel historic to you?
It doesn't really feel historic to me, I'm afraid, and it doesn't feel as historic as one would think it should be or might be to many Mexican women as well. You have to keep in mind that these two candidates, and there will be a woman, there's no doubt about that. I wouldn't even say it's very likely. It's certain that a woman will be elected. But the fact that the two candidates are women, their gender has not played as large a role in the campaign as you would have expected. And secondly, they were more or less chosen by men. And I think that that's something you have to always keep in mind. Very much at the latter part of the campaign, I would say, on Wednesday night, when Claudia Sheinbaum, the leading candidate, made her closing rally and speech, she started to sound a bit more like she cared about the fact that this was going to be a historic change for Mexico because of her gender.
We will bring women to the highest distinction that our people can give us, the presidency of Mexico. And I say it in the plural because, as we have said, I am not arriving alone. We are all arriving together. It is time for women in transformation.
It was rather late, but hopefully not too late, to mention that she planned to change the fact that Mexico is a patriarchal country, a male chauvinist country, a country where there's so many femicides. She promised to do away with all this. But she's had a long time to talk about it, and she really hasn't. Xochitil Galvez has been a little bit more on the feminist side, if you like, but also it is not a priority, perhaps, as much as it should be for the Mexican people, and therefore it hasn't been at the top of either one of their agendas.
So the most interesting thing that I heard you say out of this, for me at least, was that they were both picked by men. And we're talking about presidents and former presidents. So let's talk about the frontrunner, scientist and former Mexico City mayor, Claudia Sheinbaum. She was tapped and is hoping to succeed the current president and her fellow party member, Andrés Manuel López Obrador.
Yes, absolutely.
So you went to her campaign closing event on Wednesday. How was it? And what do we know about her agenda?
Well, it was packed, as you would expect. They certainly have the organization and also the money to bring out lots of people. They filled the Zócalo, which is a huge, enormous plaza in Mexico City, a very, very emblematic part of the city, and especially because one corner of it looks straight at the presidential palace, and she spoke from that side of the plaza, and on the corner, right next to it, is the governorship or the office of the mayor of Mexico City, which she was until she became the candidate. And so that really kind of tells you that throughout the whole time that López Obrador has been president and she has been mayor. They were in constant contact. It's the center of power of Mexico City. And it was a very, very celebratory event. She looked very upbeat, much more than usual. She is not known for her charisma, let's say that. But she did seem more upbeat than usual.
From this stand, I say to young women, to all the women of Mexico, you are not alone. I am clear that my duty is to carry Mexico down the path of peace security, democracy, freedom, justice with the fourth transformation of public life. I am clear that our guide is well-being and happiness of the people.
I had been speaking to other people and they said, well, that's very nice, but it's certainly not the first Latin American country to have a female president, and that it's about time. So it's not like they were sort of leading the pack by any means in the region.
Did you talk to voters at this campaign event? What were they telling you?
I did. And the real important issue here, or maybe I wouldn't call it issue, the characteristic of this campaign is that Claudia Sheinbaum is the candidate of continuity. She will continue where López Obrador leaves off. She has sworn to do that. She did it on the stage. It is the reason why she is popular. It's not so much because of her, but the fact that she will continue with his program. She sounded very much like a traditional left-wing candidate of Latin America. And so the voters out there were saying, yes, we want her to continue with the social programs we've been getting now. We want her to expand them, in fact. And if she does what López Obrador has been doing, then fine, we want to vote for her. But they didn't say much about her, because that's the big question here. Who is the real Claudia Sheinbaum? If you take away her vow to continue to do exactly what López Obrador is doing and to take it to the next level, who do we have? We don't know that we've really heard her own voice yet. Will she have her own voice if and when she is elected, as the polls seem to indicate she will be?
What's interesting also, though, with continuity is that López Obrador is very popular, right?
Exactly.
So he can't run again, which is why if you're looking for continuity, you might look then to Sheinbaum.
Exactly. I mean, he had other choices, but one of them was the former foreign minister, Marcelo Ebrard, and many people wanted him, but he was not, shall I say, as docile as Claudia Sheinbaum is perceived to be, and not as close ideologically to López Obrador. So that's why we have Claudia Sheinbaum as the candidate.
Interesting. Well, Claudia faces pretty stiff competition from her conservative rival. That's Xochitil Galvez, a former senator and a businesswoman of indigenous descent. So what should we know about Galvez and her campaign?
Galvez is quite an interesting woman.
We will bring life where today death walks. We will bring truth where lies prevail. We are going to bring freedom where today fear reigns. Life, truth, and freedom are our values. Have no doubt, we are going to win.
You wouldn't have expected her to have been chosen by this very bizarre coalition. And I say bizarre coalition because there are three political parties that have hated each other for decades, if not centuries.
Wow.
Some from the left, center left, to the right, the PAN, and with the PRI party that governed for 70 years in the middle. And so all of them have banded together and they chose Xochitl. Xochitl is an indigenous name by the sounds of it, or when you see it written, you can tell. But she is not really a party member of either of them. So if she were to ever be elected, I don't know how she could keep this family together without killing each other. But the interesting thing about her is that she is progressive in social matters. She's pro-abortion, women's rights, gay rights, etc., etc. But she is very conservative economically. She's a businesswoman. She also knows a lot about what it's like to be very poor. That's something that she has mentioned over and over again in her campaign.
I know the importance of social programs. While you were dancing ballet at 10 years old, I had to work. That's why it's impossible for me to take away social programs.
Her father was an alcoholic. She really had to pull herself up from her bootstraps, worked from the age of 6 or 10, if I'm not mistaken, selling things on the street. So she is not only a self-made woman, but she is a self-made indigenous woman, or at least partially indigenous. And so that is certainly something and that draws the attention to her, and also her personality. She's extremely bubbly. She is not what you would call a classic politician, but she does have a personality that is very engaging. And that's why she was chosen.
So Following in the vein of both of them being tapped by men, she was appointed to address indigenous issues by the former Mexican president, Vicente Fox. Is that who helped propel her into the spotlight?
It did, but I don't think that when she was appointed, she had a very high profile. The plight of indigenous women in the Mexican government has never been at the top of anyone's agenda. She did have that position. She hasn't just been in charge of indigenous women's affairs in the government of Vicente Fox, which was, if you look at it, a long time ago. But what it does show is that she has a sensitivity on that issue, and it is no small issue. It is something that this country has to finally grab by the horns and do something about, because the situation of women in this country is very serious. Femicides, if it's bad for the non-indigenous Mexican woman, it's even worse for indigenous women.
After the break, the issues driving voters to the polls on Sunday. So, Lucia, what are the things that voters are concerned about? What's top of mind for them?
Well, top of mind for all Mexicans at this point is violence and corruption. Stopping this wave of violence and murders that just never seem to end. The number of homicides is just extraordinary for a country that is not at war, and also the number of people that have disappeared. More than 114,000 people have been taken by we don't know whom. Sometimes they're police, sometimes it's people that are under the pay of these cartels. And then there is the issue, of course, of poverty and work. Many people want these social plans I mentioned earlier to continue. But there's also the concern that if the candidate of continuity is elected, this tendency, this trend towards a more authoritarian presidency could also not only continue, but become more intensive, because the current president has not managed yet to put into Congress and get approved certain changes to the Constitution that many people believe would seriously endanger the independence of other institutions, such as the judiciary particularly, and also the legislative branch. So the whole structure of democracy in Mexico does concern the people who will be voting against Claudia Sheinbaum and the continuity of the current president's agenda.
So, Lucia, we know that there is another reason this election is historic, and that is because the campaign season has been Mexico's most violent ever, with an estimated 34 would-be candidates killed since September. What would you say is different about this election in particular?
Well, the fact that the numbers are so high, and in fact they've gone up. The number is closer to 40 now. And before the election itself, there could be many, many more.
Gangs remove opposition candidates through targeted killings, so they can continue their criminal activities with impunity. Since 2018, more than 1,700 political attacks, murders, or disappearances have been recorded in Mexico.
But nothing has really changed in the sense that violence has been accompanying electoral campaigns every 6 years. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. And this one is the worst. And maybe 6 years from now, if nothing changes dramatically in this country, the numbers will be even higher. It's quite shocking. We've seen candidates murdered while they're campaigning or when they're in their homes. And it's not just the candidates, it's their families. At least 14 family members have been killed along with the candidates. Many people have been very, very seriously injured during these attacks, but have survived. And it happens because of impunity. It happens in Mexico because it can happen. That's the bottom line here. Corruption and impunity and vying for power, especially at the municipal level, at the local level.
Are we talking about drug cartels?
It's more than just drug. We're talking about politicians that are trying to do their rivals in, as they would say, and make it look like it could be a drug cartel, but organized crime, generally speaking, which goes far beyond drugs. Kidnapping, extortion, the trafficking of migrants and other people, women, prostitution, the whole gamut.
Violence against women has been spiking as well, even as the number of women in Mexican politics has steadily increased over the last decade. There is cynicism among voters that we've heard from as to what a woman president can do to address that.
The government doesn't protect us, not just this government, but past ones as well.
Changing things for women goes much deeper. Maybe there could be some small changes, but a president won't change the situation.
How does this spike in violence specifically affect women? And is that something you're hearing from voters?
Well, there is, as you say, a cynicism. I hear it, I feel it. I even feel it myself, to be very honest. Mm-hmm. I think that, for example, there is a law here that was put in place under the previous government that there had to be gender parity in the candidates. So what would happen? You'd have 50% women, 50% men, and then the women were forced to resign so that the substitute, the second one, the vice candidate, as it were, for that party or that position, would be a man, could then run. I mean, if that isn't ironic, what can I say? But the statistics here are really chilling. There are 10 women murdered every day in Mexico just for being a woman, because of their gender. There has been a sustained rise over the years. And the case of Mexico is second only to Brazil, which has a slightly higher population. And this is, again, I repeat, this is due to the impunity, to the inability of the state to hold these killers to account. And then, just to give you another statistic, the impunity rates, according to an NGO that follows femicides, is 76%. And of the remainder, less than 25% of those who are at least accused are brought to trial and found guilty. So you can imagine. It's very easy to kill a woman here. And there is a long, long history of a cultural history, if you like, of male chauvinism in Mexico that's undeniable. There's a song in Mexico that I wish I could sing it for you in Spanish, but nobody will understand. But it's called, and everybody sings it all.
You can still sing it.
No, I have a terrible voice. But the name of it is Sigo siendo el rey. I continue being the king. And in fact, everybody knows the words and everybody knows the song all over Latin America and the Spanish-speaking world. It means, basically it says, I can do what I want, do what I say, la, 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 to a woman, because I continue to be the king. I'm the king. I'm the one who calls the shots. And people sing it, very, very happily. But you kind of wonder, how does that jive with the world we're living in today when we're supposed to be equal, really equal?
And so then, touching on that cynicism, would any of this change under either of these candidates?
We have no idea. We have no idea just how far they're going to push the female agenda. It's not easy to govern Mexico. Mexico has so many other challenges to deal with. The violence, the corruption, the migrant issue, the conflicts with its powerful northern neighbor, the United States, the poverty level, which is still so high. We have 54% of Mexicans have informal work. The indigenous populations having even more serious issues to deal with and higher femicide rates and exclusion rates. So with all that taking place, just how much importance will the next female president be able to give to this inequality that exists? We've seen female presidents in Brazil, in Chile, some in Costa Rica, in Panama. And I would say that in the case of Chile and Brazil, there was a serious effort to address these issues. But it has more to do with society than with the gender of the president.
And that's The Take. This episode was produced by Sarí el-Khalili, Ashish Malhotra, and Sonia Bhagat, with Duha Mosaad, Catherine Nouhan, and me, Malika Bilal. It was edited by Noor Wazwaz. Our sound designer is Alex Roldan. Alexandra Locke is The Take's executive producer, and Ney Alvarez is Al Jazeera's head of audio. We'll be back tomorrow.